Hi and welcome back to my channel. My name is Anne-Sophie. I'm a knitter from Belgium. This is my cat, Lilla, and today we're here to talk to you about everything I've been knitting this November. As usual, this video is just going to be a traditional knitting podcast with finished objects. I have two, some works in progress, and a few acquisitions. So grab yourself a cozy little drink. I have some coffee here in my Christmas mug, and grab yourself a fun little whip to work on while I talk to you about my knitting. First things first, I finally finished my Franken cardigan. This is a cardigan that has been in the works for a very long time because I had some issues with the finishings. I think I cast this on in July using both Petite Knit's Copenhagen cardigan pattern and Cookie the Knitter's Diane cardigan pattern. These patterns have the same gauge, so I thought it would be possible to combine the raglan body, so to speak, of the Copenhagen cardigan with the finishings of Cookie the Knitter's Diane cardigan, because the Diane cardigan is a drop shoulder. Turns out that was a little bit tricky because both of these patterns, I should have known this, but both of these patterns call for very different yarn types, whereas the Copenhagen cardigan can be knit with a fingering weight held with a mohair, like I did with Knitting for Olive merino with soft silk mohair, so a fingering weight merino. The Diane cardigan suggests Cardiff cashmere brush light, or I think a double-stranded mohair, and I think that's where I went wrong, and I had a lot of trouble with the button bands and everything. But before I go into that, let's just show some b-roll on the screen and talk about how hyped I am to have this finished, because it is absolutely perfect and I'm so happy that everything turned out great in the end. So as you can see, this is a raglan cardigan. It has one simple raglan stitch along which you increase, which I think is a beautiful detail, and then the cuffs and the hem are adorned with these pearl ridges and folded edges, and all of the finishings are knit to look like the Diane cardigan finishings, but I didn't actually end up following them entirely. So what I ended up doing was folded stockinette edges on the button bands and on the neckline. I think they look really neat. The cardigan is very fitted. I knit it to the length of the Diane cardigan for my size. I knit a size medium of the Copenhagen cardigan body because I wanted it to fit me with the positive ease that the Diane cardigan suggests. So I looked at the measurements for both patterns, and the Diane cardigan has a little bit more positive ease, which coincided basically with one size up for me than was suggested for the Copenhagen cardigan. So that's exactly what I did. I think I knit a size medium, or the third size, in the Copenhagen cardigan body. And basically what I did for the Copenhagen cardigan, you cast on the neckline ribbing and you knit the button band as you go. So I just omitted those stitches when casting on, and I immediately started knitting on the body rather than starting with the neckline. And then I did decreases on the sleeves according to the Copenhagen cardigan pattern, and I just finished off the sleeves according to what the Diane cardigan pattern tells you to do. Same for the body. So I knit it as the Copenhagen cardigan suggests, and then I just knit it to the length of the Diane cardigan with the finishings and bind off of the Diane cardigan. Where things went wrong is when I started knitting the button bands. So these button bands, I don't want to say too much, but they're essentially not folded stockinette, and you use a technique where you make sure that you don't have this edge on the inside of your work. It's actually perfectly seamless, which is beautiful, but I realized when I did it that my yarn was entirely too thick to make this look nice. It looked bulky, frumpy, it was really bad. So then I tried a folded stockinette button band with smaller needles than suggested, and it was still, like I showed this in my last podcast, it was still too like wavy, and clearly like the fabric was waving, so it was clearly too big for the fabric that it was attached to. So I ended up frogging the button band again, and also I had knit the buttonholes not according to the Diane cardigan pattern, which is, it has them looking really neat if you follow the instructions. Like so clean. This is beautiful. What I did was just decreases. Oh, Lilla, you're making the table wobble. Stay here. Hi. Hi. So, wait, what was I saying? There's cat hair in my face now. Pull. So I didn't follow the button band instructions because they looked like too much faff and I was being lazy, which was ridiculous and which I should have done. So I reknit the button bands with 4 out of 5 stitches picked up and 1 needle size smaller, and then they looked perfect. So I'm very, very glad I did that. I do think that because I sized down my needles... Lila, you're making the desk wobble again. Kom in, mooie meid. Kom maar mee. She's ignoring me. So if the desk wobbles, I'm really sorry. It's like a defected IKEA desk and every time she walks all over it, it wobbles. Yes, hello. She's so cute though. Now where was I? So I did knit the button bands according to the instructions, but I did a folded button band instead, folded stockinette on smaller needles with 4 out of 5 stitches picked up. And it worked out fine, it's beautiful, but so what I think went wrong... Oh yeah, and then for the neckline, I did the exact same thing. I did pick up the stitches that were recommended, but I think I should have not sized down the needle size for the neckband because it is, as you can see when I close it, a tiny bit tight. And it's like there's like a little bit of like tugging on some sides. Lila, just sit down and stop walking around. Thank you. She just sat down her paw and it like fell off the desk. That was funny. Yeah, that's what I did. But I think because I sized down my needles, both the neckband is a little too tight. And the button band is, I think, shorter than it's supposed to be. Because I had 15mm buttons, yellow ones, beautiful yellow buttons. Those who follow me on Instagram will have seen my virtual mental breakdown about these buttons. But so initially I had yellow, butter yellow buttons, 15mm as the pattern suggests, but they were much too big. I'll insert some pictures. And then I found these white ones in my stash that were just like 1mm smaller, I think. And they look a little bit better, but they're still too big. So I decided to sew them on because I really wanted to wear this cardigan, but I am on the lookout for like slightly smaller butter yellow buttons to make this look a little bit more polished than it does right now. So because I had that little mental breakdown over on Instagram, I think I posted at least 3 polls asking people what they thought I should do with my buttons, and someone that I occasionally DM with on Instagram, so a viewer and a follower, she sent me this adorable package with, I guess this is already like a sneak peek for my acquisitions, but she sent me, along with what she sent me this adorable stitch marker, which is so, so cute. This darning needle. Also, and most importantly, these stunning butter yellow buttons from her grandmother's button collection. It matches the fabric beautifully. Like, they look like they're perfect, but when I put them on, they're actually bigger than the ones I have on here right now, and I think they're the same size as my other butter yellow buttons. So I feel so silly for not telling her the exact measurements that I was looking for. Yeah, but they're still a little too big, but they look beautiful on this yarn combination and on this sweater. Lila, so Lila is being a little menace because not only did this very, very sweet person, I'm not going to say her name because I don't want to if she doesn't feel comfortable with that, but not only did she send me these beautiful buttons and stitch marker and darning needle, she also sent me some tea and snacks for Lila. There was also some catnip in the box, so I think I'm going to knit up, as she suggested me to do, a little fishy with some scrap yarn, and I'm going to put some catnip in there for Lila. Like, she's still, I don't know if you can see this, she's still going crazy over this box. Oh, are you busted? Are you busted? Lilache. Yeah, Lila is again going nuts over this box because there was once catnip in it, but right now it only contains these beautiful, beautiful buttons, which now I have all these stunning butter yellow buttons that don't fit my cardigan, which is just so sad. Also, I want to thank this sweet friend so much again for sending me all of these. This was so ridiculously sweet. I cannot believe she did this for me. And when the package arrived, she also added like the most adorable little note with a cat on it. When this little box arrived, my partner was literally like, how wholesome are knitting people? Like, this is insane. I'm so happy to be a part of this community. It brings me so much joy, and this is just one of the sweetest things anyone's ever done for me. But so unfortunately, the buttons don't fit on my button band because of the smaller needles I used. I will be further on the lookout for teeny tiny, probably 12 or 13 millimeter yellow buttons. But the thing is, I am afraid that the buttons will then be too small for the buttonholes because the holes were made for 15 millimeter buttons. So I'm like at this point almost pondering whether I should entirely redo them, but this was so much work, I really don't want to. Let me know in the comments what you think I should do. I also do think these kind of look fine. Like, they're not too bad. I sewed them on neatly. They're pretty cute. It's just annoying to me that they're white and not yellow. Now, my next finished object is a pair of broken seed stitch socks. These were also cast on a while ago, but I am so glad that I finished them. I kind of forced myself to finish them because I had to finish these ASAP to cast on a new sock whip that's due the 24th of December. So I sort of sped through these, and I'm very glad I did because I am so happy to have these finished. These are the basic seed stitch socks. I found this pattern on Ravelry. It's a free sock recipe. It's not a pattern, so it's a recipe for this stitch pattern that tells you to use whatever sock construction that you prefer. So I went with what I know from Summer Lee's I'm So Basic socks because I really like that sock recipe. And so essentially what you do to get this pattern is you combine two yarns and you knit one row with the main color yarn, I guess. So with the purple, I knit one row, and then you do knit one, purl one with the color changing yarn the next row. Then you knit another row with the main color yarn, and then you do purl one, knit one with the color changing yarn. And that's how you get this beautiful look. I had this Zauberball that I purchased I think 2 years ago, and I really wanted to use in the color Lookstoff. It's a very well-known yarn by Schoppelwolle, which I think is a German brand. And yeah, it's just this really fun color changing yarn. I had just one skein of Filcolana Arwetta that I bought when I didn't realize socks called for 100 grams of yarn. So I didn't really know what to do with that one skein until I realized it matched this Zauberball beautifully in color. Like, there's some colors in here that just match each other so well. Like when I was knitting this bit, at certain points I didn't know whether I was on a Arwetta row or a Zauberball row, which is just insane. It matches it so nicely. But so I used Filcolana Arwetta in the color Delicate Orchid, and that way I used up, I think, half of that ball even only, which is insane. I'll weigh my leftovers of these yarns and put that information in Ravelry because I'm interested to see whether I could get 2 pairs of these socks out of one Zauberball and one main color. I think I definitely have enough leftovers for my Zauberball to make another project like this. I might actually gift it to one of my friends because I already have a pair of these socks. So if any of my friends is interested in knitting a pair of these socks, let me know and I'll send you the rest of my Zauberball if I have enough. This was so much fun. I really enjoyed knitting this. I kind of like how they don't match each other perfectly. It's really sweet. And I can't wait to wear them. I cast on 64 stitches, I think, which is a pretty good amount for me. I think I could have gotten away with 60 stitches, but yeah, 64 is fine as well. I'm very interested to see how these wear. And oh, one thing I do have to say, I've been showing you the pretty side the whole time. The joins and like every time I switched color on the side don't look perfect. Although this is my first sock and this is my second sock, I think you can clearly see that my technique improved as I was going along, so I am very proud of that. Yeah, but so there's a pretty side and a non-pretty side, but I bet people who are much better knitters than me can get these to look a lot neater. Also, one of my socks is a little longer than my other one because I don't count my rows. I don't think I'm gonna notice when I'm wearing these. Yeah, they're really soft I think the Arwetta is extremely soft because it's a merino, and the Zauberball is not a merino, and a lot less soft, a little more rustic-y, typical sock yarn feel. But I feel like the combination makes for the perfect balance between the two types of yarn, which I'm very, very excited about. I'll wear these as much as possible and then report back to you in my Everything I Knit in 2025 video to let you know how these wear. But so I strongly recommend this pattern. I had the most fun knitting up these socks, and I think I'm gonna have the most fun wearing them. They're so colorful and bright and just exciting to cheer you up in winter. I'm so in love with these. Next, I think I want to start by talking about my new cast-ons. I think I have one whip that I made progress on and 2 new cast-ons to talk about to you today. My first whip is my Christmas sweater, which I thought would be finished by now, but I also had... yeah, it also gave me a little mental breakdown on Instagram because I had to frog 5 times. And I had to frog a lot of knitting 5 times, but she's looking stunning. I'm knitting the Northern Augustins number 4 by Augustins DK or Anne-Sophie Velling. It is this beautiful Christmas sweater with these really, really pretty bows and these just horizontal lines and scalloped edges, which looks just so jolly and cozy and Christmassy. I just had to cast on this sweater this year. I am knitting this using Knitting for Olive Heavy Merino and Soft Silk Mohair in the color Cloud, which is as Knitting for Olive describes it, a pinkish white, but I would actually call it more of a peach. It's like more warm-toned pink than the contrast color that I'm using, which is Knitting for Olive, Soft Silk Mohair, and Heavy Merino and Dusty Rose. I think the Dusty Rose is slightly more cool-toned than the Cloud, so I think I made a little bit of a mistake in terms of the main color that I chose to use because I don't think it's in my color season, but I do think the pairing looks really, really, really great, and it just looks so pretty. I know most people knit this in a beige with like red bows, but I thought this was really Christmassy because my Christmas tree has pink Christmas ornaments and pink bows all over it that I made myself last year. So yeah, this is going to make me match with my Christmas tree, which I'm so excited about. In terms of construction, this is a round yoke colorwork sweater with a folded neckline, a folded hem, which is why I'll be knitting this ribbing at the bottom of the body for quite a while still. Sorry, I had to relocate the kitty for a second because she was being a menace. You stay there. Do you want to go outside? No, she's not. She's just gonna walk around and be a menace. Okay, so this is a round colorwork yoke with a folded hem and a folded cuffs. I am not following the pattern instructions for... Hi! I am not following the pattern instructions for how to fold these things. For the folded neckline, I just cast on with a long tail cast on and knit things together because I know it looks less neat than casting on provisionally and knitting things together, but I thought it would bring more structure and I also just prefer that technique. And then for the folded cuffs and hem, she suggests to pick up stitches and then knit those together when you bind off, but I will just... like with a 3-needle bind off, but I will just do the same as I did for the collar. Yeah, just do it my way. The issues I've had with this pattern are all related to me being a colorwork newbie, to this colorwork being very difficult because it has a lot of long floats. As you can see, there's like very long bits where you have to float the yarn. And gauge. I'm going to bring Lilla to the living room to hang out with my partner because she is being a menace, as you can see. You're stuck on my sweater. What happened was, first of all, I didn't gauge swatch. My bad. I know. Stupid. This pattern calls for 6mm needles, and I cast on with larger needles than suggested because I know that a lot of people knit colorwork more tightly than their stockinette, so the gauge differs for a lot of people, and I thought I would be like that as well, so I cast on the colorwork on 6.5mm needles, and it was just way too loose. So I think I'd gotten down to the end of the scallop when I realized, and I frogged it all and I restarted. And I even knit the collar again to make it a little bit shorter because I have a pretty short neck, I think. And I thought I would prefer that fit. I've tried it on already and it fits really well, so I'm glad I did that. But then I cast on again with 5.5 millimeter needles, and I then I cast on again with 6 millimeter needles, redid the entire color work, and realized it was still much too loose in terms of gauge. So then I frogged all of the color work. And then I redid it on 5.5 millimeter needles because then I made a gauge swatch and I realized that I was going to hit the stockinette gauge on 5 millimeter needles. So I knit the color work on 5.5. It's looking really nice. I used ladderback jacquard. I'm very thankful. I don't remember who it was, but someone commented on my knitting plans video, my fall knitting plans video, that I needed to try ladderback jacquard or jacquard. I don't know if it's supposed to be pronounced in French. For the longer floats, essentially that looks like this. You have like a knit stitch running along the back rather than catching your floats. It looks a lot neater when the floats are a little shorter than down here, but it was really, really nice. I think the second time I frogged the color work, it wasn't because of my gauge, or well, it was. I was just knitting it way too loosely, and I lost yarn chicken with the contrast color with the pink yarn, like on my third final row of the color work. So then I frogged again, and I made sure to pull my floats a little bit tighter, which I think they might still be a little bit too loose, but it looks a lot better this time around. You can see that by the fourth time I did ladderback jacquard, it looks a lot neater even than the third time I did it over here. But yeah, it's looking okay for my first time doing color work, I think. I think they're still maybe a little bit loose, I'm not sure. We'll see how it blocks out. But so, yeah, very thankful to the person who told me to do ladderback jacquard because I did catch longer floats, like for example on the last 2 rows I caught the floats because it wasn't really worth doing ladderback for like 2 rows. And there I did notice I had some more struggles with like my tension. My tension over here is really, really nice in my color work. And then in the bows, you can notice that sometimes in some rows where I caught floats, the tension is a little less neat. So I do recommend using ladderback jacquard jacquard for long floats. Yeah, because it was fun. It was easy. It was pretty cool. And yeah, not too hard to learn, actually. I watched like 3 TikToks and 1 YouTube tutorial and then I was set. But so, once I finished the color work for the 3rd time, I started on my body. And I knit the entire body. I was going to change my needles to start the ribbing. And I realized that my gauge was much too loose. This was on way too big a needle. So I looked up my needle size when I was switching out my needles. And I had been knitting the body on 6 millimeter needles rather than 5 millimeter needles entirely. The 6 millimeter needles were in the spot that my 5 millimeter needles were supposed to be in my needle case. And I hadn't checked what was written on the needle, so I used the wrong needles for the entire body. I had to frog the entire body, and then I knit most of the body with 5 millimeter needles. Not most of the body. I knit like this much. I'm exaggerating. I knit like this much with 5 millimeter needles after frogging all of that. And then I realized this is way too tight. So I learned that apparently my color work gauge does not differ from my stockinette gauge. So what I ended up doing is just knitting this entire body on 5.5 millimeter needles, which makes my entire sweater like off gauge now, because clearly if I would have done it perfectly and hit gauge, I would have had to knit the entire sweater on 5 millimeter needles. But I don't think it looks bad at a slightly looser gauge. I think it's like half a stitch or 1 stitch off gauge. I think the fabric looks pretty good. I don't mind it being a little bit bigger or more oversized, especially for like a Christmas sweater that's going to be really warm. I'm fine with that, but it is like so annoying that I had to go through all of that with this sweater. But I am hoping or assuming that from now on it will just be smooth sailing, because I just need to knit the rest of the ribbing and fold it and then do 2 sleeves, and I'll have my Christmas sweater done pretty soon. And then I can match with so many people in the knitting community because so many people are knitting this pattern for their Christmas sweater this year. And it makes me even more excited to have this finished because how fun is it to all be matching this Christmas season? I'm so hyped. This is, yeah, one of my favorite projects of this year. And I think I'll definitely be doing more color work in the future. I had so much fun. This is so pretty. Yeah. I'm ecstatic about this project and I can't wait to show you the finished object in my next episode because then it's going to be almost Christmas or Christmas will just have passed. And yeah, I can tell you all about how I matched with my Christmas tree and had the bestest time. Now, my next cast on is my pair of Christmas socks for my partner. This is a yarn that my partner chose on holiday. We always try to find a yarn store when we're on holiday during the year, and then he buys one sock yarn every time. Oh, it looks a lot brighter on camera than it is in real life. It's more of like a true navy in real life than an electric blue. But so he chose this really beautiful navy Lang Socks 4-ply yarn in a yarn store in France. And I am knitting these beautiful socks. I'm using stitch counts and instructions that I've memorized from the I'm So Basic socks by Summer Lee, but I'm knitting the socks a little differently. I'm just knitting something that I thought would be pretty because he already has a lot of basic socks. I've been knitting him Christmas socks, like we make our own advent calendars. We have for the past few years. I have these jute little bags that I embroidered numbers on in Christmas colors. And he has an advent calendar for me with little pockets. That's, I think, actually for children, but we use it for me that he got at De la Camilla. We fill all of the little baggies with snacks or little gifts or things the other person loves. And then we open one every day for Advent. The 24th of December always contains his hand knit pair of socks. Ooh, I just dropped some stitches, one sec. And so these are his socks for this year, but he has a lot of really basic socks already. So I wanted to knit him some fun socks. So what I did is I cast on 2mm needles. I knit a few rows. I then did a purl row and I knit one less row than I did on the other side. And I knit the cast on row together with the last row of stitches. And then I switched to 2.25mm needles. I knit one purl row. And then I got started on a knit 3 purl 1 stitch pattern. And so I continued that stitch pattern all the way down until it was long enough. And then I did just a slip stitch heel flap and gusset. And now I'm continuing the pattern along the foot to then just do a simple decrease toe. I think it's gonna look really cute. It's gonna look very similar to like his sporty socks. I do think I might need to add an elastic to the folded edge over here to make them fit well, but we'll see. I think it's looking a little frumpy now, but I think it's gonna block out stunningly. Be a really pretty sock. I'd love to knit like this for myself, but with a picot edge. I think that would look really cute. This might be the next pair of socks I cast on after these are finished. One thing I'm annoyed with is that I didn't do proper maths or didn't try to figure out a way to make both sides of the foot look the same. As you can see here, after the sole, you start with one purl ridge and then you go into the pattern on this side. Whereas on the other side, you start with the 3 knit stitches. So it's basically like an extension of the sole, which is a little annoying, and I'll have to figure out if I knit a pair of these socks again. But I don't think my partner will mind. He said I was being a little crazy for being annoyed by that, so I guess he'll be fine with it. But if I knit another pair of these kinds of socks for myself, I'm gonna try to figure out a way to make this work, make it look a little better on both sides, because now it looks perfect on one side and bad on the other, which I'm not too happy about. But yeah, my partner doesn't mind, so I'm not gonna restart the entire sock. I don't have a lot of time left, so I'm going to finish this one, then knit up a second one and wrap them really beautifully so he can act surprised when he opens them. The thing is, I always have him try on his socks because I'm very scared that they won't fit him because of like gauge stuff or whatever. I cast on too little or too many stitches, so I have him try on his socks as I go to make like the perfect length and everything. So yeah, he won't be surprised, but he will be happy to receive them. I think. So yeah, I'll have them finished for him to act surprised on the 24th of December when he finds them in his advent calendar. Lilla's whining by the door. Lilla really is in menace mode today. She's back in this room now, but we only have one more whip to go through and then an acquisition. So let's get right into it. My first whip is in this beautiful project bag that my sister-in-law sewed for me. Lilla. Come here. Lilla, what are you doing? Oh, you are one little crazy chicken. My sister-in-law sewed me these for my birthday. They're so pretty. She also has some, I'm doing some shameless promotion. She didn't ask me to promote her, but I just love her a lot and she makes beautiful things. She is selling stunning knit and crochet project bags on her website right now that she hand sews. It's at thegivingnest.be. I'll add the link in the description if you're interested in checking it out. She makes beautiful things, so she deserves all the support she can get. She's a very new small business, so go support her if you want to. No pressure, of course. I'm just shouting her out. This is a whip you've seen before. I'm using Knitting for Olive, Merino, and Soft Silk Mohair in the color Dusty Rose that I won with a giveaway. I won a giveaway by Maria Sverden, who is the designer of the Marielle blouse pattern, and I got to pick a pattern and the yarn sponsored by Knitting for Olive. So I picked the Marielle blouse pattern. As you can see, I finished both the sleeves and I'm on the final stretch for the body. I think I'll have her finished pretty soon. This is a stunning drop shoulder pattern with short but beautiful 1x1 ribbing and this all over pointelle looking lace stitch pattern. The drop shoulder edge looks really neat and beautiful. The lace stitch pattern is very addictive and potato chippy to knit. Come here. Lilla's back on my lap. The lace stitch pattern is very fun and very addictive to knit, and I am having the most fun with it. I hit gauge, so I'm knitting it on the suggested 4mm needles, and I am knitting the third size, which is suggested for my bust circumference. I'm knitting this together with my dear friend Freya. She's knitting the exact same color combination, and well, no, she's using Sunless Garden Sunday in a dusty pink with the Knitting for Olive, Soft Silk Mohair, and Dusty Rose, and she knit the exact same size. She's finished hers already and it looks amazing, but I think by now we've both concluded that we could have sized down for a bit of a more blousey fit rather than an oversized fit. I think this will have a bit of an oversized fit because the size 3 or the third size is the first time the sleeves are increased, and I think these sleeves are a bit wide. I only have like 2 or 3 repeats left on the body, so that's how deep the yoke is going to be, or like the drop shoulder is going to be, and yeah, I'm a bit worried about how deep that is and how wide these sleeves are, but it looks really pretty on Freya, so that has calmed me down a little bit already, and I'm just really excited to keep knitting on this and finish this as soon as possible. I don't know what else to say about this knit except for that I'm super duper excited about it, and I can't wait to make the thumbnail for my next podcast because I think that will have both the finished Christmas sweater and this one finished on it, and that is just going to look stunning. I'm going to be a sugar plum fairy girly this Christmas season because I will have all these Dusty Rose sweaters finished and I could not be more excited. I think this will look really cute over a dress or with a skirt and some knee-high boots or even with jeans. I think this is going to be very versatile. I know lace for winter isn't like a good idea. I cast this on in the fall, so it's like perfect for like the fall or the spring. But I think because I overheat really easily, this will actually be really nice during winter. So yeah, keep you posted. I'll probably finish it before the end of the year and wear it a little so I can report back later in my Everything I Knit video. But yeah, I think next time you'll see this, we'll finally have a finished object. Exciting. Now, with all this talk about our homemade advent calendars, I realized that I completely forgot to show you this knitting related advent calendar that I received. I actually got it 2 months ago and I completely forgot to talk about it because I figured I was going to talk about the contents when I got them. But since I don't have any acquisitions again except for the sweet gifts my Instagram friend sent me, I thought I would talk about this. This is an advent calendar that was gifted to me by Hand-Dyed Harmony. This is a Finnish-based small business owned by Anu. She sells a lot of beautiful notions and hand-dyed yarns on Etsy. I had previously bought notions from her, stitch markers, needle stoppers, and talked about them on my podcast. And she had thanked me for talking about them, but then I hadn't thought about it afterwards. But I ordered in October or September, I think, I ordered some stitch markers for a friend's birthday. And along with those stitch markers, she sent me this advent calendar of hers with the most beautiful and the sweetest letter that I've ever received, thanking me for promoting her business. Yeah, she essentially wanted to gift me this as a thank you, which is just absolutely ridiculous and so insanely kind, and I cannot stress enough how grateful I am for this. I've been showing everyone who's been to my home this advent calendar. I've been telling all of my friends. I even posted it on Instagram because I feel so blessed and lucky and excited to have this and to have been sent this. And I cannot wait. Tomorrow is the 1st of December. I cannot wait to open this and to get a little notion every day. I'll be showing you everything that I got or that was in here in my next podcast. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, I could not be more excited, and I will have a lot of acquisitions, I think, in my next podcast. I'll probably also film after Christmas, so maybe I'll get some knitting related things at Christmas as well. And then my acquisitions section in the next podcast will make up for me not buying any new yarn or knitting related things for the past few months. Yeah, I think that's everything that I wanted to talk about with you today. I hope you enjoyed listening to me yap and witnessing all of the chaos this little one brought today. She's very calm now, which I'm happy about. Please let us know in the comments what you were working on while you were watching this video. Those comments are just my absolute favorite to read. I'm really nosy, and that just makes it feel like less of a one-way interaction, if you know what I mean. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, get to enjoy some lovely knitting time, and Lila and I will see you in my next video. Bye bye!